Some Americans see crossing the border to Mexico as a way of saving money on their healthcare and medications, but they're taking their lives into their own hands. Today, we're going to talk about some of the counterfeits that we've seen in Mexico and talk to an expert. This is part of our 118th Congress policy briefing on counterfeit medicines. On our website at this URL, you can find all of the videos about different topics on counterfeit medicine policy. One of the most disturbing developments that we've seen in the issues around counterfeiting in Mexico was broken just at the beginning of 2023 when researchers revealed that they had been purchasing and testing medicines they'd bought in bricks and mortar licensed pharmacies in Mexico from licensed pharmacists, and they found fake oxycodone made with fentanyl and fake Adderall made with methamphetamine being sold in legitimate pharmacies to American patients. This actually isn't the first time we've seen this problem. In 2021 and 2022, we saw two cancer treatments, Avastin, used to treat colon, lung, and other cancers, and Herceptin, specifically used to treat breast cancer, reported as counterfeit by COFEPRIS, the Mexican Consumer Protection Regulator. In 2022, COFEPRIS also issued several warnings about counterfeit antibiotics, including one fake antibiotic liquid designed to treat children. COFEPRIS also warned in 2021 and 2022 about counterfeits of the arthritis treatment injectable drug Actemra. These were particularly disturbing to PSM because they are printed with English packaging. Normal medicine in the Mexican drug supply chain is printed in Spanish. So these were specifically created to target American patients looking for better deals. They are, as all the other counterfeits we have shown, containing no active ingredient. They are simply placebos. In 2022, COFEPRIS also warned about a counterfeit version of the diabetes drug Farxiga used to treat heart failure and chronic kidney disease as well. The most high-profile counterfeit PSM found last year was counterfeit blood thinners. They were in border town pharmacies, but still licensed bricks and mortar pharmacies in Mexico, being sold to American tourists. You can take a look at these. The two on the left are English language labeled, so they were specifically manufactured to target American tourists. The one on the right, which is not how that particular drug is sold in Mexico to actual Mexican patients, was also made to appeal to Americans. It's basically got the English bottle, the US bottle, but with a Spanish language label. It turns out that that medicine, I believe, when it's sold in Mexico, is sold in a blister pack. And so this was specifically designed to try and outwit clever American tourists. In this photo, you can see some examples of the fake blood thinners. And if you just imagine for a second that you need a blood thinner, but instead what you end up getting is a placebo and risking stroke and blood clots, you can imagine how dangerous this is. So Todd Ratcliffe is the CEO of the Pharmaceutical Security Institute, a nonprofit association that protects public health by sharing information on the counterfeiting of pharmaceuticals amongst security personnel and initiating enforcement actions in partnership with law enforcement in jurisdictions around the world. And at this point, you all are at least 20 years old. You've been doing this for a long time, haven't you?
Correct. We usually, our big report we do once a year for our members is called the Situation Report. And last year, our last report was the 20th report that we've done. So 20 years in doing that report. So we have 20 years of information and intelligence that we have in our archives here at PSI.
And so, I mean, you guys really do the hard work of chasing the bad guys. You have people working as private investigators and undercover, both for yourself and then for people who make drugs, sharing intelligence about the crimes amongst themselves and then building cases for law enforcement, right? You're basically like pre-law enforcement.
Correct. What we do, and all of our members agreed upon before they joined that they agree that they will share all their investigations within law enforcement communities with the hopes of having law enforcement actions taken throughout the world. We bring in their information, we anonymize it. Their information is always their information. Then we can collate everything together, do a report for our members. And our remit is to track counterfeit medicines illegally diverted in major thefts of over $100,000 throughout the world. And we interact with ministries of health, law enforcement, and world trade, world customs organizations.
I got to say, the fact that someone like you exists to assemble and build strong cases that you bring to law enforcement is a real benefit that I don't think people realize. I mean, there must be tons and tons of resources spent to prepare these cases so that we can actually get bad people who endanger patients taken down. I mean, I just, my hat's off to you for the work that PSI does.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
So I've talked a little bit about lots of counterfeits that we found, mostly being notified by the Mexican consumer protection regulator, COFEPRIS, but fake blood thinners, which terrifies me. If I needed a blood thinner, the idea that it would be fake. Fake blood thinners being sold to Americans was something that that your team brought to me, and that's how I learned about it. Can you tell me a little bit about the story behind how these popped up?
Basically, we were alerted to it through patient complaints. Basically, a lot of times patients' first call will be the manufacturer. So through complaints from patients to our manufacturing partners who are members of our organization, this issue came up on our radar. And through that complaint process, we were able to eventually obtain pictures of the medicines, the packaging, the lot numbers, all aspects of those individual medications that from, if you're a brand protection guy, I like to say those guys can spot a counterfeit a mile away, although it's not that easy for the average person to do so. However, through this process, through the complaints, through our awareness, we were able to get pictures of these various items of the medicines, the parts and components, and that's where we determined this looks very much like counterfeit medicines.
So, I mean, that begs the question, Todd. If you're a patient and you need a blood thinner, and you go to your pharmacy in Yuma, Arizona, and you buy it and it's fake, you probably have an expectation that both the pharmacy, the wholesaler, the criminals involved, they're all going to get arrested and go to jail. If you go to Los Algodones, Mexico, and you come back with a fake blood thinner and you're harmed and you have, let's say, a stroke or a deep vein thrombosis that is a result of a blood clot, should you have the expectation that in any timely fashion that the purveyor and owner of that pharmacy and the criminals in Mexico are likely to be arrested and brought into U.S. court in short order?
In short order, no. There'll be a large investigation that would have to actually prove that that medicine actually caused your death. And then if you try to bounce over to a foreign country, that's going to be a thinner, tougher hill to climb also.
Because American law enforcement can't just go to Mexico and arrest a Mexican citizen for this. They have to actually build the case in Mexico with Mexico law enforcement, right?
Correct. And then you can also build a case within the United States, and it's going to be a joint effort of some sort. And then it's time consuming. There's the MLAT process, they call it, through the federal system, that this embassy to embassy, you start then becoming involved with, what are the treaties, and a lot of high level, lawyering takes place in those processes versus someone who is just down the street within America, infecting American, on our street.
So that, I mean, that your justice for you and your blood clot could be measured in years, if at all. I mean, it's possible that there's some people that just can't be extradited.
Absolutely. Especially if you bought one medicine, it's hard for one medicine to make a case, anyone to make a case on one medicine alone and by itself. It's going to have to be, that could be the start of an investigation that a federal police officer or agent would be the initiation of their case, to where then they would have to go out and duplicate that process themselves to gain the evidence purchasing from that individual that you purchased from also. If you were to go to Mexico and purchase the medicine and then bring it back to the U.S., find out that it was counterfeit, it would be very, very different process, because it is a foreign country that you're dealing with where the product came from versus something that happened within the United States soil itself.
So in the photos that you provided us, and it, there were three different counterfeit blood thinners. Two of them were labeled in English. Now, I'm correct in wondering that Mexican drug supply drugs are not labeled in English because the population's native language is Spanish, right?
Correct. Absolutely. They're going to be labeled, and all of the packaging, everything will be in the native language where the product is sold so that people will understand what they're taking and how to take it and everything that goes along with medicine itself.
So, why did the criminals label these medicines in English?
The labeling of medicines from Mexico into English would be to target the American shoppers who are coming down to Mexico to shop and purchase medicine. So they would think, oh, this is U.S. Product that happens to be in Mexico, and that's why we're getting a good price on it or whatever.
These labels that they used looked pretty convincing to me. Do you think that an American patient can probably look at these labels and spot a problem, or does it just look like the real thing and a good deal?
I think with labeling and related to counterfeits, you'll see everything from bad jobs to good jobs. The majority is well done, and it's hard for the average person to spot a counterfeit. As I mentioned earlier, if you're a professional and you work on this every day of your life, they can spot their own product counterfeits usually a mile away. But it's kind of like counterfeit U.S. currency. Secret Service does a great job, obviously, of identifying it. Myself, couldn't tell the difference a lot of times. So it's very much a very professional environment, neat experience. So yes, your average person cannot tell a vast majority.
So Mexico is a source of fake opioids made with fentanyl, which is not, I think, the primary focus of PSI. You're typically focused on life-saving drugs, but it is the focus of the DEA and many local law enforcement that are struggling with the flood of fake opioids made with fentanyl that come from Mexico. Um, is there any reason to believe that the same Mexican cartels that are pressing fake opioids aren't also in the business of fake life-saving medicine?
Yes, I think it would not be surprising for that to happen. There's reporting out there that it does occur. When you look at cartels, they're a business. They do illicit business, but they're a business. So they're looking to expand their market anytime they can into different, products and different avenues. So making that transition from, pill presses and fentanyl into other counterfeit medicines would not be very difficult. Would not be a stretch to think that they're also involved in the medications that are illicit coming across the border.
The Mexican cartels are big in pressing fake pills, fake opioids with fentanyl, and they've got a basically a death toll in the US from that business. Do you think, is there any evidence that they're also in the business of doing this for life-saving medications, those same pill presses, just pressing blood thinners instead of opioids?
Yes, there's reporting out there that would indicate that the cartels are involved in counterfeit medicines that are being produced within Mexico, used in Mexico and sold within Mexico, but of course ultimately end up in the United States at the same time.
The Mexican cartels, as we know from having watched Narcos, have decades of experience smuggling into the US. And the amount of seizures of fake pills that the DEA and Customs and Border Protection have done just in the last year is staggering. Is there any reason that they wouldn't also use these same smuggling techniques that bring in millions of fake opioids into the US also for fake life-saving medicines that they could charge a high price for? It costs very little to make.
Yes, I think it's very problematic that we would see that happen. They would take those same trade routes and shipping routes and techniques to cross over, illicit medicines into the United States.
As we were putting the finishing touches on this presentation, the LA Times published a blockbuster Mexican pharmacy investigation that found that 71% of the pills that they bought in legitimate bricks and mortar licensed pharmacies in Mexico tested positive for fentanyl or methamphetamine. The pharmacies they visited all catered to American tourists in Tijuana, Cabo San Lucas, and Cabo San Juan. To read the article, look in the description of this video. To see all the videos in the 118th Congress Counterfeit Drug Briefing we've got, go to the URL below.